So welcome. And again, this is where we stopped yesterday. And I looked at the material and I saw like, instead of rushing to chapter 2, let's spend some time on this real number, negative, positive, multiplication of negative and positive. So today we're going to go over this review and then we'll go to 2.1. I thought I want to go to 3.2 and stuff like that, but let's just do 2.1. But again, let's take a look at this thing here.
Okay.
So once we have this thing, which is again, look at A. Look at A, we have this thing, and you know the odd operation. Many of you see that we have a minus, we have multiplication, we have exponent. So just like before, which is again, if you have this item, and again, hopefully all you guys see that we will do exponent first, right? So the exponent will be 4 times 4 will give you 16. So this is what I told you guys yesterday is, again, between subtraction and multiplication, you probably do multiplication. But this is the new thing, ladies and gentlemen, that I want you to see, or this is what you have to see is the sign in front of the number is the number itself, okay? Or in the sense, yes, you can look at this and you say, for multiplication, it's not that difficult in terms that you say, well, keep the negative and 3 times 16 to give you 48, right? But think in terms of this thing here, which is negative 3 times 16, which is a negative times a positive, the result is still a negative, right? So again, regardless of how you see it, but one thing you want to keep in mind is the sign in front of the number is the number itself. So regardless of you see that it's a negative 3 or just a 3, you still have to keep this negative. And later on, you will see of like C, right? Like problem C, you have this item and this item. And when I get there, I will tell you the item. But now this thing, no matter how you look at it, you still get negative 48, which is, again, hopefully you guys see that a smaller number take away the larger number, someone will get a black eye, right? Just kidding. We still have a negative because, again, 18 take away 48 or 48 minus 18 to give you 30. And again, because of the 48 is bigger, which is you keep the sign of the larger number. That's what we went over yesterday. Again, which one is a bigger number? If you have opposite sign, which is one here, you have a positive 18 and a negative 48. So think in terms of combined item, right? If they have the same sign, I combine them, I add them together, I kept the sign. If they have opposite sign, yes, it's the same as subtraction, right? You know, and I know some of you guys say, wait a minute, Mr. Tran, my other teacher tell me to do the change, right? Change to addition, take the opposite. You know, it's the same. However you remember, however you do it is up to you. You know, and again, some of you guys say, oh, Mr. Tran, I just type it in my calculator and I got negative 30. It's perfectly fine too. So again, you either remember the rule or know how to use your calculator, right? There's no other way around it, right? So again, for me, like I mentioned yesterday, for me, if they have the same sign, I add them, combine them together, I kept the sign. If they have opposite sign, I subtract them and I kept the sign of the large number, okay? So you can treat this like a subtraction if you want to, or you can treat like you combine them together, okay? So first of all, question with A. Hopefully A, you all see that easy, right? B, looking at this thing here, we know that, again, there's no number in front of the 32, so this is a negative 32. So that's where a few of you guys say, wait, is it a minus sign or is a negative sign? To determine if it's a minus sign, if there's no number in front of them, then it's a negative sign. If there's a number in front of them, then it's a operation, but it's still a negative 48 if you want to think it that way, okay? But the operation, if there's a number in front. But looking at this thing here, I know many of you say, well, I have division, addition, and division, so I have to work from left to right. I have to do division first, and doesn't matter. Doesn't matter which one you do, but you have to do division first. So again, negative 4, which is now we know that we have another division. We want to do another division, which is, again, don't add this or subtract this because you have division, right? Which is 24 divided by 3.
Positive 8.
And now you have a negative 4 and a positive 8, right? Same side, we add. In this case, we have opposite side, we subtract. The answer will give you 4, right? Yeah. So again, that's the idea, or that's what you want to do. We haven't done this all the operation with the sign number. That's why I want to do it today. So first of all, question with A or B, and again, 2 out of 2, everyone. If not, see where your mistake. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I got both of them right.
Okay, that's good. And again, if you don't have it right, see where your mistake, make a note, right? That's what we here for is, see where your mistake, make a note so you don't make that same mistake again, okay? So let's take a look at C, which is now, here come a problem, right? Some of you probably have this thing here. You say, well, I know that we have a subtraction. I know I have multiplication, and then I know I have subtraction. But then, wait a minute, what is this 2, right? So again, the first thing we know is we have to multiply. It's the first thing we know that we need to do, right? So if you do this thing here, if you have this thing here, which is again, what do we have? So we know that because of this parenthesis, there's nothing in this parenthesis, so that's your single number. So the first thing we need to do is we need to multiply. So if you multiply, you can look at both ways, which is again, think about this thing here, which is I told you guys that the sign in front of the number is the number itself, which is again, the sign in front of the number we treat like a -3, -32, right? So this thing here, you treat like a -2. So what is -2 times a -4? Well, negative times a negative is a positive. That's why you have to put in a positive, which is again, yes, is a addition form, but again, you have to put in that positive. We cannot convert from subtraction to multiplication, okay? So a negative times a negative will give me a positive, and now hopefully just a smooth sailing. Maybe that is the only stumble that you guys come across is you say, wait a minute, I multiply 2 with this, I get a negative, but same thing go, a negative and a negative is still a positive. If you guys do the way that you learn in terms of a negative, a minus, and a negative, which is change. So regardless of how you do it, you still should have, oops, I do it wrong. I highlight the wrong one, but
it's supposed to be the 8
right.
and the 18, right?
Right. I highlight the wrong one, but you all know. Again, we work from left to right, right? Which is again 18 times 8 to give you 26, and then again 26 minus 94, which is again a small number, a -68, right? So again, a small number, subtract or take away the larger number, you will have a negative. Okay.
Okay.
So question with this thing here, question with C. Whoever say you have trouble with C, were you able to see or make a note in terms of how to simplify it?
Yeah, I haven't. I understand it now. Thank you, Mr. Tran. But I do have a question. Can you just briefly tell me again about adding with different signs? Can you just briefly go over that? I know that subtracting with different signs causes it to keep the sign of the larger number. Mm-hmm. But as far as adding goes, can you just briefly tell me that one more time, please?
Again, for adding, if they have the same sign, you add and kept the sign.
Okay, that's what.
So if they both negative, you add and kept negative. If they both positive, you add and kept the negative.
Okay, that's
so same sign, you add. So for me, I keep on telling you, like, think in terms of combine, right? Think in terms of combine sign. So if they have the same sign, you combine them by add them and kept the sign. If they have opposite sign, you subtract them and kept the sign of the larger number. Okay. So in the way, think in terms of combine rather than think in terms of add or subtract. It's a little bit, different than what your textbook explain or how you do it, but that's how I do it for me. But let's take a look at D, right? D, please, ladies and gentlemen, I know you have, like, you hate this with a passion, right? You hate the -3 in front of the bracket, but do not subtract them, right? Remember, this is the easiest thing, but it's not the right way. You have to simplify whatever this thing is, and then you subtract them, okay? A lot of students, what they do is they say, oh, I know 10 minus 3. I know you know 10 minus 3. But again, you have to take 3 and multiply to whatever this thing is. So this is just the same like yesterday. The only thing different is they throw in a lot of negative in here for you guys. But looking at this thing here, we know that we need to simplify the parenthesis first, which is 5, take away 8, or negative 8 and a positive 5. We subtract and kept the side of the larger number, which is 8 is a larger number. So again, or you can think that a smaller number take away a larger number, you still have a negative. But doesn't matter that negative 3, which is again, now we have this item. We cannot change the sign. We have to get rid of the exponent first, which is again, negative 3 square tell you that negative 3 times a negative 3. What is negative 3 times a negative 3?
Would be a positive
Will give
9.
me a positive 9, right? Which is again, negative times negative is a positive. That's why this thing here I just bring down. Everybody see that everything is the same. I just bring down. The only thing I change in is negative times negative is a positive 9. And now I know that I need to do in the bracket. Same idea go. 4 take away 9, or 4 is positive, 9 is negative. We subtract. 9 take away 4 is 5. I kept the side of the larger number, which is a 9 is negative, so I still have a negative 5. And again, this thing here go back to C, right? The sign in front of the number is itself. So a negative 3 times a negative 5, a negative times a negative to give me a positive, which is again, once you have this, hopefully it's a smooth sailing because now the answer is just 25. But again, you know, like I know a lot of you guys, you know, the reason why you don't like algebra, you know, you either don't like it or you scared of algebra is because all of that small tedious rule, right? When do we keep the negative? When do we subtract? So again, if you see the rule, if you can see the rule and apply the rule, you will like algebra. Because one thing in math, ladies and gentlemen, one thing in math is there's always an answer, right? There's only one correct answer. Your job is to find that correct answer, right? So, you know, if you apply the right rule, you will lead to the right answer, okay? So first of all, question with A, B, C, or D here. Any question? Hopefully all of you guys, if not some, majority of you guys have 4 out of 4. And if you don't have 4 out of 4, don't worry. We still have time to hopefully one day you get 4 out of 4. But again, question here with any of this thing here.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
All right, see, does it apply in every situation where not the absolute value, but in the parentheses with an exponent? Would you always subtract or add if it's in parentheses first? Then once you get that number, then you go back and add the exponent?
Yes, simplify the exponent, yes.
Okay.
So you always work in your parenthesis or absolute value first. And because D, you have a bracket, but that's why you have to work with the grouping first. So we cannot work with the bracket because the bracket have 3 terms, right? If you look at this bracket, there are 3 items in here. I cannot work with those 3 items at one time. So I have to do the parentheses. So basically you try to ask yourself, what is the smallest, the common item that I can do first? So the parenthesis will be the first thing you want to do. And then after the parenthesis, then we cannot do this without get rid of the exponent. That's why we have to, again, at this step right here, we cannot add this together because the exponent is only associated with the 3, right? The exponent does not associate with the 4. So we have to work with that exponent at that level or at that step. And then after you get rid of the exponent, now we have the bracket. You get rid of the bracket and then you multiply and then the end, right?
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question too. So as far as, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, does the bracket kind of like fit in with the parentheses category, so to speak? Because I was a little bit confused about the order of it when it came to the bracket. I knew the parentheses came first, but then the bracket, I was like, it's the bracket, excuse me, the same thing as the parentheses.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yes. So bracket, parenthesis, or absolute value is the same at the same step. So they just keep on saying parentheses, but it's basically in general a grouping. If you look at my slide yesterday, if you look at the PowerPoint I posted yesterday, they say grouping, which is, again, to group something, you have to either put them in a bracket or parenthesis or in absolute value.
Gotcha.
So the goal is to get rid of all of those grouping first if you can. Okay. And it's weird. It's weird. Right now, I tell you to get rid of the parentheses first, and then by the end of the day today, I tell you that there's nothing you can do with the parentheses. But when we get, you see. But again, any other question with A, B, and C here, or D? So if you get E and F correct, you are in a very good shape. Let's take a look at E and F. It's not hard. I agree. Whoever say, well, it's look monstrous, right? You have a fraction, you have an absolute value, you have a parenthesis, you have an exponent. The only thing you don't have here is a addition, right? But again, look, no fear, right? Look at this thing here. Just ask yourself, do one thing at a time. Don't look at it. If you stuck, just ask yourself, what do I do first? I want to get rid of the grouping first, right? And remember yesterday, I told you guys, we treat the numerator at one problem, right? Remember yesterday, we told you that, if anything, just block out one item, right? Just work the numerator first and then do the denominator. So if all the number confuse you, just block out one of them. Let me use some other color. So again, just block out this item here so you can only work on the numerator. So if you work on the numerator, looking at this thing here, we want to get rid of and for those of you who do simultaneously, that's fine. For me, because I present the item, I just do one thing at a time. I know some of you guys probably get rid of this thing here and then square them. It's fine if you do simultaneously. But again, do you agree that 3 minus 7 will give me -4 inside my absolute value? And looking at this thing here, inside my absolute value is -4. When I took it out, reminder, when you take the outside of absolute value, it will always be positive number, right? Remember, that's your rule. Is anything inside the absolute value, when you extract them out, it will be a positive number. So looking at this thing here, everybody see that I get rid of my absolute value, right? So I get rid of my absolute value. I took this thing out. This is what I have. Now, again, I just continue with my numerator, which is before I can subtract them, I have to take the square, which is, again, I have 5 times 5 will give me 25. And again, I want to finish the numerator, which is, if I finish the numerator, I have 4 minus 25, right? Agree? And again, if I looking at this thing here, everybody see that I skip one step, but I do simultaneously, and I forgot to highlight it. But again, 11 minus 20 is -9. Do you guys agree that a smaller number minus a bigger number will give me a negative? Which is, again, like I mentioned, we treat the numerator at one item, we treat the denominator as one item. And again, looking at this thing here, if I multiply, which is a negative times a negative, will give me a positive, which is, again, first of all, let me pause right here. I jumped the step without knowing that I jumped the step. But question, did I confuse any of you guys here in terms of from this item to this item here? So everybody still with me here, how I got 25 and how I have a -9. Okay. And again, once we have this thing here, which is I do the numerator, which is I have a -21. I multiply the denominator to give me 18, which is now. Let me ask you guys this question. Is this our answer?
No.
Thank you. No, right? Reminder is a fraction is not in the lowest term. You have to reduce to the lowest term, which is you have to ask yourself, what can you divide? Is there any particular
3.
number that can go in both, which is 3. And again, 3 going to 21 will give you -7. And again, 3 going to 18 will give you 6. This will be your answer. If you want to change it to a mixed number, that's fine, but the answer would be -7/6, okay? So question with E. Question with E in terms of my answer, -7/6. And let's go over F, which is, again, F is very similar to C. It's just the combination of the C with the addition of the denominator, right? So again, just treat one thing at a time. We want to get rid of this multiplication, or we want to get rid of the parenthesis, right? Again, the parenthesis here is just basically tell you it's a multiplication, which is a -2. For me, like I keep on mentioning, reminder, the sign in front of the number is the number itself, which is -2 times a -5 will give me a +10. Okay, and again, let me just finish the numerator, which is 330 plus 10 to give me 40. And again, I keep on saying, I think when I make this thing here, I have to make another slide. But again, hopefully you guys did not get confused that I did the top and I did the bottom too. 7 squared is 49, 7 times 7. 3 squared is 3 times 3. And again, reminder, I mentioned yesterday the difference between the 3, the minus or the negative on the outside and the negative with the parenthesis, right? This thing here is not a -3 times a -3. It's just 3 times 3. Okay, and that's where I mentioned that at the end of class of yesterday. And again, looking at this thing here, 40 minus 12 will give me 28, and 49 minus 9 will give me 40. And once again, this is not your final answer because 4 can go into both number, which give me 7/10. So question with this 5 or 6 problems here. Have I, again, if you have 6 out of 6 problem, you are pretty good with the first test. Again, the first test, most of the thing will be the order operation. And I think the hardest thing is the order operation with the negative and the positive involved. So again, over the weekend, see if you can do the homework section 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, and 1.7. Again, whatever we just did, the 6th problem we did here is 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, right there. I don't know yet. I don't know how many questions on the test. Roughly around 20 to 25. But again, is spread out from chapter 1 and chapter 2. But the reason why I say you are safe because most of the problem in test 1 is involve the sign, involve your negative, your positive, and your odd operation. You know? And ladies and gentlemen, the rule of sign is have to stuck with you throughout the class, throughout the semester. And even when you pass this class and you go to 130, no matter what math class you go, that rule of sign is always applied. That is just the foundation of algebra. That's the foundation of all math, okay? Anyway, if you don't have question with this 2 problem, the test will not appear until September, whatever the due date is. For now, you only work on your homework and your quizzes, okay? So for now, only the homework and the quiz. Don't rush into the test. I know some of you probably got this down because it's review, but again, work on your homework and work on your quiz now. By roughly around next Wednesday or so, your test will pop up. But for now, just work on your homework and your quiz. Okay. So if you don't have questions, let's take a look at chapter 2.1. And like I mentioned today, my goal is just to go over go over 2.1, and then by next Tuesday we do the rest of chapter 2. Okay. So before we do 2.1, we have this terminology, and again, they probably won't test you on the terminology, but basically there are two things that you want to know, or there are two things you will hear me say a lot, which is the term. As long as this multiplication is one term. I know you say, wait a minute, Mr. Tran, this right here, 3x, there is a constant 3 and there's a variable x. Why is it one term? Well, as long as it's a product, the product meaning is multiply, as long as it's multiplication, we call it one term. And again, the 3, we call this a coefficient, which is the number or the constant, and the x we call is a variable. And again, you say, well, right here we have -4 times x times y. Yes, it's still, because it's multiplication, it's still one term. You just have different variable, right? You have a constant, you have an x variable and the y variable. Same thing go, you have an x squared variable and you have y to the 4th variable. This thing here, hopefully all of you guys know that if they don't have a number in front, it's assumed that there's a 1, which is the constant is 1. And again, the x variable, the y to the 3rd, and the z, right? So again, your main goal for 2.1 is basically combine like term. And in order for it to be like term, ladies and gentlemen, the variable have to be the same, okay? I repeat that again. In order to be considered the like term, in order to be a like term, your variable have to be exactly the same. Meaning if you have an x on the other term, you should have an x. If you have an xy, your other term should have an xy. If you have x to the 3rd, your term should be x to the 3rd. If you have xyz, your other term has to be xyz. So again, hopefully you guys see that the variable have to be the same in order for you to consider like term. If the variable are different or the exponent are different, we just call them unlike term. And again, you say, wait a minute, Mr. Tran, right here, the variable x and y over here is x and y. It's not x and y, right? Over here is x and y, I agree, but right here is x and y to the 3rd. So as long as they look something different beside the number can look different. The number can be 7, 9, whatever the number is. Your variable, your x, your y, your z, whatever the variable you have need to be, have to be, must be the same. If they look anything different, is unlike term, okay? And again, you all probably know that. So what do we do, which is the main thing or the only thing we have in 2.1 is basically combine like term. So if you combine like term, what side? Someone asked, does the side, again, the negative and positive is not, again, the number can be anything. Again, we are not looking at the number can be different. We are looking at the variable, the x's and the y. This is, to consider the term, this is your again, the whole thing is one term, but the variable illustrate if they are like term or not, right? So again, because I have an x over here and an x over here, they are like term. Because I have x to the 3rd and x to the 3rd, they are like term. So again, the number can be negative. That's why I purposely give you negative and a fraction. So again, the number can be any number they want it to be. Is the variable that you want to looking for, okay? So again, it's the variable that tell you that you have a like term or unlike term. Okay, so it's not the 4 and the 8, it's the x squared and the x. Okay, so like I mentioned, your goal in this chapter or in 2.1 mostly in the beginning is basically combine like term, and that's where I mentioned last time you combine sign, right? If they have the same sign, you add them. If they have opposite sign, you subtract them. So in terms of this thing here, if they are like term, which is in this case, your x is the same. And if they are the same, ladies and gentlemen, life is good. Because if they are the same, all you need to do is add the coefficient, which is, again, look at this thing here. If you have 9x added to 21x, you will have 30x. Ladies and gentlemen, please you do not increase the power. You do not have x squared, okay? Just think in terms of this thing here. You have $9 and you add it to $21. Do you have $30 square? Right? You never have $30 square, right? It's weird. Remember, this is basically the rule. To combine like term is if they are like term, you add the coefficient and kept the variable. The variable do not change, okay? Later on, when you multiply, which is when we get to chapter 5, when we multiply, there are some different rules, but now when you combine like term, all you need to do is combine the coefficient and kept the variable. So in terms of this thing here, the y and the y, they are the same. Looking at this thing here, all we have to do is take this coefficient, which is the number, which is, again, I have a positive 3 and a negative 3, or a smaller number, take away a bigger number. My answer will be negative 15y, okay? So it's weird, you know, the reason I mention this is because I shouldn't say a lot, I feel my student, when they add like A, they give me the answer as in 30x squared. But for B, they don't give me negative 15y squared. And I ask them why. They say, well, you subtract. You shouldn't increase the power. But again, add or subtract, you do not combine like term, you do not increase the power. You do not change the term, okay? Your term is the same for adding or subtracting. Okay, so again, looking at this thing here, same idea go. Looking at this item, as you can see, we have an x, we have a y, and that's all the two terms you have. You only have an x term and a y term. So one thing is, there are two ways of doing this, which is you can be lazy and go in and say, well, this is my x term. And if they have the same sign, remember, same sign, you add and kept the sign. Opposite side, you subtract and kept the sign of the larger number. So looking at this thing here, you can go in and say, oh, my x term, let me add them together or subtract them, depending on my sign. And my y term, I add them or subtract them, right? Or if you want to, and not many people do this, but if you want to rearrange, for me, I don't really rearrange it, but I just want to show you that if you want to rearrange, make sure wherever your 12x go, the negative have to go along with it. Don't just move the 12 and the 4y without moving the side. Wherever the 12 go, that negative have to go along with it. Wherever the 4 go, the positive have to go along with that, okay? Remember, the sign in front of the number is the number itself. So looking at this thing here, again, you know, looking at this thing here, this is your like term, which is your x and your y. And again, because the x, negative 17 and negative 12, this thing will give me a negative 29. And again, 4 take away 9, or they have opposite sign, which is I subtract and kept the sign of the larger number, which is I have a negative 5y, okay? And again, this is your answer, ladies and gentlemen. Please do not give me 34xy, okay? Subtraction and addition, you do not put them together. If they are not the same term, that's it. If they are not the same term, you cannot combine them, okay? You know, whatever I tell you, it's not that I'm making up. You know, all my year of teaching, every time I give, you know, the thing is, I do not give you paper tests, right? I do not give you paper tests because all the tests is online. So in order for you to get, I did not mention this earlier or before, but for your test, if you want, you know, the MyMathLab grade your test. So if you want portion credit, because sometimes MyMathLab, if you tell it wrong, they don't give you portion credit. But if you want portion credit, when you submit your test, within a 15-minute window, within the 15-minute window, you can send me your scratch work. Again, just please be organized. Write your number 1, number 2, number 3. Organize for me. You either can scan it or if you have a cell phone, you can take a picture of your scratch work and send to my email. In that way, I can look at your scratch work, and because I look at on the computer, so please be organized. Do not put number 1 here and number 2 on the 4 page and go back and number 3. Again, please organize for me. So help me to help you, right? If you put organized, I can look at your work and I can say, okay, if you show me this step, like I show right here, I say, okay, you have it right. Maybe you added somewhere wrong. And then, you know, like I say, a lot of time, people, not a lot of time, I feel my student on C, they give me -34xy. Again, remember, if they are unlike term, you cannot do anything, okay? And again, let me continue with this here, which is, again, reminder, not the hardest, but one thing you have to ask yourself is, you know, for me, this is what I do. I go in, I say, where is my like term? What will be my like term, which is the X and Y have to be exactly the same, right? So again, as long as they have something different, they are unlike. That's it. If they are unlike, there's nothing I can do. So the only like term I have is 16xy minus 4xy, or positive 16 and -4, which is, do you agree that -16, or not -16, 16 take away 4 will give me 12. I kept my variable xy. And again, one of them is xy, the other one is xy square. They are different. As long as they are different, you cannot combine them. We cannot make spaghetti and put everything together, ladies and gentlemen. If they are not the same, don't force it. Don't put it together, okay? And again, I give you E. I give you E just because your Connect Math like to give you this thing here. They like to give you like PQ, UV, VW, you know, like ST, those variable where your T is look like a plus sign when you write on your paper. Again, they give you PQ and to make, you know, your eye trick you, right? Make sure, looking at this thing here, do you agree that this is my like term? My P and my Q by itself is the same. So again, for me, this is what I do is I just ask myself, what are my like term? And if my like term is identified, if they have the same sign, I add. If they have opposite sign, I subtract and kept the sign of the larger number, which is 21 minus 5 will give me 16. And again, the 21 is positive, so it's positive 16. And again, as you can see, this is my leftover, or this is my other like term, the P square and the Q. And again, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I highlight the negative. Please make sure that, you know, write this down however you want to do it. Make sure that the sign in front of the number is the number itself. The sign in front of the number is the number itself, which is in this case is a -6 and a positive 19. Okay, which is a -6 and a positive 19. Because they are different sign, I have to subtract and kept the sign of the larger number. Now, a few of my students, what they do is they take the 6 plus a 19, they give me the 25, they bring down the negative. That is not how you do it. The sign in front of the number is the number itself, which is in this case, we have a -6 and a positive 19. Opposite sign, which is again 19, take away 6 will give me 13. The sign of the larger number is 19. That's why it's a positive 19. Okay. So again, this is the idea of 2.1. The idea of 2.1 is in the sense combined like term. Okay. So first of all, question with this thing here, question with combined like term. And I reminisce a lot because again, I want to point out the careless mistake a lot of my students do. So hopefully that none of you guys do those careless mistakes. Okay. Let's take a look at the last thing. Let me go over this last item, the distribution property, distributive property, not distribution. Distributive property, which is many of you guys know the distributive property And remember last time in the beginning, I told you that you want to simplify the the OR operation. You want to simplify the parenthesis first. But if you look at this thing here, can you simplify the parenthesis, right? There's nothing you can do in terms of this item have an X and this item does not have an X. And as you can see, this thing here, they are unlike term. And if they are unlike term, we cannot, if they are unlike term, we cannot add or subtract them, right? So this is what they tell you is we have to use the distribution or distributive property, which is again, all we're doing is tell you take the 6, multiply to the 3, and take the 6, multiply to the 5. And technically, again, this is the only one time that I do this, which is technically all you do is you take the 6 and multiply inside, which is you distributive them in, right? Which is again, 3 times 6 will give me 18, 5 times 6 to give me 30. And again, you cannot add them, you cannot subtract them because one of them have an X, the other one does not have an X. So they are unlike term. And in this case, this is your answer. Okay, so looking at this thing here, that's the goal, or this is what the distributive property do, which is they tell you to take this number and distributive them in. And ladies and gentlemen, reminder, the sign in front of the number is the number itself. So looking at this thing here, you don't just distributive the 3, but you distributive a negative 3, which is a negative times a negative to give me a positive 12. A negative times a positive will give me a negative 45. Okay, so again, yes, technically that's what you do. You take this number and you multiply to the number, the coefficient here. You take this number and you multiply to the coefficient there. And again, no matter how many items inside your parenthesis, right? No matter how many items inside your parenthesis, everybody see that I have an X, I have a Y, and I have a constant, which is I cannot add them together. The only thing I can do is distributive the 2 in. Everybody see that? So again, if they have 3, I distributive 3 of them. If they have 2, I distributive 2. If they have 4, I distributive 4. So it doesn't matter what I have, as long as there is a term inside my parenthesis, I have to be fair and distributive throughout, which is in this case 2 times 2 times 7 to give me 14. 2 times 11 to give me 22, and 2 times a negative 15 to give me a negative 30. So again, question with this distribution or distributive property. And again, you probably saw this along the way. This is not the first time, no. The first time you see the colorful blue and red ink on your screen, but again, this is not the first time you see the distributive property, right? And let's do the last item here, which is they put everything you learned in chapter 2.1 together, which is, again, basically they ask you to simplify. So how do we simplify this item here? Well, before we can combine anything, just like before, we have to get rid of the parenthesis. We cannot add or subtract inside the parenthesis. Therefore, just like the above item, we need to distributive my parenthesis in. And if I distributive my parenthesis, which is again, not my parenthesis, distributive the 5, which will give me 15, 5 times 3, and negative 60, which is 5 times a negative 12. I do not distributive to the 13 because the 13 is not in my parenthesis. Do not be happy and just distributive everywhere. I know you're generous, but again, we only can distributive into the parenthesis. Okay, and again, the only thing different between example 3 versus example 2 is because at the end, we have like term. And if you have like term, we need to combine them, which is reminder, the sign in front of the number is self, which is negative 60, and a negative 13 will give me a negative 73. Same sign, I add and kept the sign. Opposite sign, I subtract and kept the sign with a larger number. So the answer I'm looking for, or the answer they're looking for, is 15x minus 73. Question with A. And again, same thing go with B. And ladies and gentlemen, reminder, right? Reminder, this thing here, the reason why I give you this, because a lot of people make a lot of careless mistake with this thing here. When you distributive, make sure that the sign in front of the number is the number itself, which is when you distributive them in, you have to distributive a -6. And again, if they don't have a number in front of their x, that is assumed to be 1, which is 6 times 1, or -6 times 1 to give me -6, -6 times 3 to give me -18. Okay, and once you have this thing here, now we just going back to our example 1, which is what are my like term? My like term are 15x minus 6x, which is 15 minus 6 will give me 9, and my y, which is 2, +2, -18, with the same sign I add, opposite side I subtract, which is again 18 minus 2 is 16. The sign of the larger number, which is 16, is negative because of the 18 is negative. So again, first of all, question with A or B. Question with A or B. And let's do the last one here, which is hopefully you guys see that it's very consistently the same as B. They, instead of just give you an X by itself, a Y by itself, they give you the X and a Y together, which is again, same idea. The sign in front of the number is the number itself. Therefore, when I distributive a -9. And again, -9 times 1 will give me -9xy. -9 times 4 to give me a -36. So make sure when you distributive a negative, your sign have to change. If it, inside your parentheses is negative, when you multiply a negative, it's become a positive. And again, hopefully right now you say this is a smooth sailing, because again, my xy and my xy is the same. Therefore, I have a -4. My 2 and my 36 is the same. I add them together to give me a -38. Question, ladies and gentlemen. Any question with this 6th problem on here, how to use your distributive property in conclusion, in conjunction with combined like term? Next week, we will begin with this thing here. This is still in 2.1. This is the same item we have last time, which is again, basically they want you to use this terminology to translate the word, right? They want you, if they use the word in English, can you write it in the algebraic expression, which is again, basically you have to look at this item so that you can translate. So again, we will go over this next time. This is a good stopping point for us. So over the weekend, ladies and gentlemen, over the weekend, see if you guys